All right, so let's get right into it. Today we're doing a deep dive into something that's been puzzling a lot of Formula One fans. Red Bull's recent performance dip. They haven't been quite the dominant force we're used to seeing.
Yeah, it's definitely raised some eyebrows. And to really get to the bottom of this, we're going to be looking at some fascinating observations from none other than ADRIAN Newey.
The ADRIAN Newey.
The one and only.
Wow, okay, so this isn't just any casual observer. We're talking about the guy who's designed some of the most iconic championship-winning F1 cars.
Exactly. His insights are gold. And what makes this even more interesting is that he recently moved to Aston Martin.
Oh, that's right. So he's speaking from a unique position, having been with Red Bull for so long, and now seeing things from the outside.
Exactly. It adds a whole new layer of intrigue to his perspective. So getting into what he actually said in this Mundo Deportivo article.
Yeah, what did he see happening at Red Bull?
Well, he observed that Red Bull's cars were becoming increasingly difficult to drive. And this wasn't just a recent thing. It seems like this trend started back in 2024 and has continued into this season.
So it wasn't just a blip. It sounds like there were some fundamental issues with the car's handling.
Right. And a really good way to see this is how it affected the drivers.
Oh, that's a good point. Because you've got Max Verstappen, who we all know is an exceptional talent, and he was still able to pull out some decent results.
Exactly. But then you look at his teammate, Sergio Perez.
Who's no slouch himself.
Yeah,
He's a proven race winner.
absolutely. And Perez really struggled to get to grips with the car.
Wow. So if someone like Perez is having that much trouble, it really does point to something being inherently wrong with the car.
It's like they built a car for one very specific driver.
And what makes this even more intriguing is that, according to this article, Newey actually raised these concerns internally at Red Bull.
Yeah, but it seems like those concerns weren't really taken on board.
So they were ignoring the advice of one of the greatest minds in F1 history.
It's pretty mind-boggling, isn't it? I mean, why wouldn't you listen to ADRIAN Newey? Was there some sort of communication breakdown within the team? Or were they just overconfident from their previous successes and a bit blinded by that?
It's almost as if they were so focused on winning that they missed these crucial warning signs.
Yeah, it's like they had their blinders on.
Yeah.
And there's another really interesting thing that Newey pointed out. He said that setting the car up for a specific Grand Prix could actually mask these fundamental issues.
Oh, so it's possible that some of those good results that Red Bull did manage to get were actually hiding deeper problems.
Exactly. They might have nailed the setup for a particular race, but those victories could have been covering up some serious flaws in the car's design. You know, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone.
It might look okay on the surface, but underneath.
The problem's still there.
So it wasn't just about the drivers adapting. It's almost like the team was constantly having to fight against the car itself.
Yeah, they were always playing catch-up, trying to compensate for these inherent flaws. And that constant need to adjust might have actually prevented them from really addressing the root causes of the problem.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've got to talk about the elephant in the room.
Newey's departure.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to connect this with his concerns about Red Bull's direction.
Right. Did he feel like he wasn't being heard? Did he see Aston Martin as a team that was more receptive to his ideas?
Because clearly Aston Martin is a team on the rise. They're hungry for success.
Absolutely. So it makes you wonder if Newey felt like his talents would be better utilized elsewhere.
It's like he saw the writing on the wall and decided to jump ship before it was too late.
It really does add a whole new dimension to this story.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about the bigger picture. What does this say about Red Bull's future? Can they recover from this?
Yeah, we'll have to see. But one thing's for sure, this is a fascinating story that's going to continue to unfold.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll be here to break it all down for you. And, you know, when you think about it, Newey leaving isn't just about losing a brilliant designer.
Right, it's bigger than that.
Exactly. You're potentially looking at a brain drain. I mean, if someone like Newey felt disillusioned enough to leave, what's stopping other talented engineers and designers from doing the same?
It's that domino effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
One key person leaves and suddenly everyone starts questioning things.
Exactly. And that really raises the stakes when we talk about Red Bull's future. Can they bounce back from this? Can they attract new talent to fill the void? Or is this the start of a downward spiral?
It's a defining moment for them, isn't it? They could go either way. They could acknowledge the issues, make some changes, and maybe even recapture their former glory.
Or they can just bury their heads in the sand and hope for the best.
Which rarely works out.
Never does. But you know what's interesting about all this Newey's observations about Red Bull? They actually tell us something really important about success in Formula One.
Okay, I'm curious. What do you mean?
Well, it's easy to think that these top teams have it all figured out, right? They've got the money, they've got the best drivers, the best engineers. So what could possibly go wrong?
Right, they seem invincible.
But what Newey's saying is that even those teams are vulnerable to internal politics, to communication breakdowns, to maybe even a little bit of arrogance.
It's a reminder that success can be fleeting.
Exactly. You can't just rest on your laurels. You have to constantly be adapting, evolving, being open to new ideas.
Especially in a sport like Formula One, where everything moves so fast.
Right. If you're standing still, you're basically falling behind.
So it all comes back to that big question, what does this mean for Red Bull's future?
Can they turn things around? Or have we seen the last of their dominance? I guess we'll have to wait and see.
It'll be fascinating to watch, that's for sure. Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into this whole Red Bull saga and what we can learn from Adrian Newey's perspective, let's take a minute to just kind of summarize the key things we've talked about.
Yeah, it's clear that Red Bull's performance dip isn't just a temporary thing. It seems like there are some deeper design issues that maybe haven't been fully addressed.
Like we talked about with Newey saying the cars were becoming increasingly difficult to drive.
Exactly. And then the fact that his concerns weren't really shared within the team, well, that adds a whole other layer to this story, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder about the internal dynamics there. Was there some resistance to change? Were they maybe a little too confident in their previous approaches?
And then, of course, there's Newey's move to Aston Martin. I mean, we can't say for certain that it was directly because of these frustrations at Red Bull, but
But it's hard to ignore the timing.
exactly. It's like we're looking at a puzzle with a few missing pieces. We have these glimpses into what might have happened, but the full picture is still a bit unclear.
Yeah, but even with those missing pieces, what Newey has shared gives us some really valuable insight into what's been going on at Red Bull. It raises questions about their team culture, their decision-making process, and whether they're able to adapt and evolve when things get tough.
It's a good reminder that even the most successful teams aren't immune to these kinds of challenges.
Yeah, they're not invincible. They can fall victim to internal conflicts, communication breakdowns, and maybe even a bit of hubris.
Exactly. And I think the big takeaway here is that to stay on top in Formula One, you have to constantly be pushing forward. You have to be open to new ideas and willing to challenge your own assumptions.
Complacency is the enemy.
Absolutely. So we're left with this big question mark hanging over Red Bull. Can they bounce back? Can they rediscover that winning formula? Or is this the beginning of their decline? I guess only time will tell.
It's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out. And that's it for our deep dive this week. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time for another look behind the scenes of Formula One.